So good afternoon or good evening, whatever your time of day is, or good early morning, as Ron might be appropriate for Ron and Tiago. What I'd like to do is to call on each of you to ask you to check in. When you check in, please reflect on some of the questions or experiences that arose from the last XR session last Monday, what you've gleaned from empathy buddy sessions, and or what you've experienced from attempting to set up your own empathy circles. So with that, can I call on you, Mark? I know you've just come in, but if you'd like to settle down, I'll call on you a bit later.
Okay, I could do it now. It's okay.
Great, go ahead then.
Yeah, so had a good empathy buddy call. That was really good. So they've all been good. So another good one. That was great. The other thing that's happened is I haven't managed to get a circle actually happening. However, I recently put it out to some friends about if they want to do an empathy circle, and I had a really positive response. I had loads of more responses back than I thought. So we're going to go ahead with that. So that's been very encouraging. It's funny, I had a bit of trepidation. I thought, okay, I'll put it out, we'll see. And they're all friends, we all know each other, we're all in the WhatsApp group, and I had loads of response, much more. I thought maybe I get one or two, but it's been really good. Yeah. So, that's me.
Good for you, Mark. Thank you. And
thank you.
Freddie, you're up next.
Hi. I had a really good buddy call last week. It was good to get to know Monica a bit more and sort of deepen the practice. I haven't set up facilitated a circle of my own yet, but I've also spoken about it to quite a few people and everyone seems very keen. But that's on me for not pulling the trigger on that, really. I think that's all I was going to say.
Okay, Freddie, thank you. And Cecilia, you're up next, followed by Joelle.
I had two really good buddy calls, and I have had 3 sessions on my own with friends. And I also joined Anne and Dean for the march on Thursday, which was very exciting as well and good. And my experience of trying to find people, I'm making an event, and I really want to get everybody interested in joining. They were very good calls. They were with friends, but reaching out to others is I'd really love if some of you could have an event in Sweden to get people interested. The method is very easy, but so powerful, and I love the idea. Make it part of an action as well as taking care of the movement as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. And Joelle, you're up, and that will be followed by Shay. Okay, where you go.
Hi, everybody. I had a great buddy call with Marta. I think I do notice the process being very different for me depending on the emotional state that I'm in. Sometimes it's harder. Yeah, sometimes it's harder and easier. one thing I noticed is that I really feel like I see a lot and learn from watching other people in their process as you're sitting with, if you're sitting with them with empathy and just sort of watching this process is more enriching for me than I would have guessed at the beginning. So, and I would like to set up an empathy group with my work people. I haven't done it yet, but I'm more motivated because we had a really rough meeting the other day. So that's on my mind.
Thank you, Joelle. And Shay, followed by Deborah Maddox. Shay.
Hello, everybody. I had a few body calls. It was great. I'm doing that more and more, getting that into my life, and also noticing the difference between the regular, normal communication, conversations, and doing it this way. So I like it more and more, and I dislike more and more the usual way. It's becoming more and more. I will speak about it more later. So, good evening.
So, thank you, Shay. Deborah, followed by Tina.
Hi. Yes, I had a great body call with Shay. Thank you, Shay. And I also ran a group in a work setting, and it was really interesting because I came across a challenge that I've been able to practice being challenged with the week before. So that fitted in really nicely. Yeah. Good. Looking forward to tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. And Tina, you're up, followed by Mark.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's good to be here. Yeah, I'm really getting a whole bunch out of the buddy calls. It's just really lovely to connect with somebody else, like randomly across the globe somewhere. So yeah, I've enjoyed that very much. Somehow I'm stalling on trying to facilitate an actual circle of my own. And yeah, I don't know, I guess I don't have it in me just yet. So, but yeah, I'm sure when the time is right and when it's needed, we'll see. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Tina. And I said Mark, but I miscalled. Aaron, would you like to speak, please, followed by Tiaho?
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me for just finishing off my dinner. I feel rude doing so, but I'm sorry. I didn't manage to organize my buddy call this week. I've been away from my emails intentionally. So I look forward to catching up with my buddy sometime soon. And although I did manage to also have a empathy circle this week, there was lots by the skills and there was a lot of opportunity for me to apply the sort of skills and philosophy behind what I'm learning here, and in the way in which I respond and listen to the people I encounter, and with lots of positive impacts. And it's interesting with the students I have at the school, with how much it can help them work through their own process and have a deep learning, rather than telling them something. If I reflect them and they hear what they just said and maybe hear their own lack of realization in a way, they can then actually process it much more fluently, I'm finding, which is very interesting. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Tiaho, followed by Marta.
Kia ora, everyone. Yeah, I'm sorry to have missed the meeting last week. It was a bit of a gap, actually. And I was traveling, practicing my introduction to empathy circles for about 6 hours or something, driving my car. Prior to that, let me see, involved with a former cohort in our time zone, Ron and I. So it's not exactly that I'm facilitating it myself, but it's interesting in our co-convening, so to speak, and working out how we're doing our empathy circle and so on. Let me see. And my buddy call. Well, I think I missed my buddy call with Jean, but had a catch up with Michelle, and it was pretty interesting and cool. And since that was actually my first one, and yeah, the process of the buddy call, not really sure about whether like the empathic kind of meta part of it was not exactly doing classic empathic listening, but going with the flow. So yeah, thanks everyone. Good to be here. I'm feeling pretty tired actually, but mellow.
Good. Thank you, Tiaho. So Marta, followed by Ron, please.
Yeah, so I had a lovely empathy buddy call with Joelle, and it was really, I always get amazed how much it helps with my clarity when I've got a set amount of time that I'm offered this gift to just hear myself. So that was good. And then I had a couple of calls during the week with different people, and I had, which I suppose was not a cycle, but I had my partner come to me and he had something he needed to work out, and so he asked if I'd listen to him out of his own accord, which was really nice and somewhat surprising. Yeah. I see.
Thank you, Marta. So Ron, you're up, followed by Renata.
Kia ora koutou. I acknowledge Te Aotearoa no Paparangi and Te Awa Tupua. I had a buddy call with Tina, and it was so fruitful for me and for her that we repeated it again the next day. And a lot of that was, for me, was examining my resistance to putting empathic listening out to my world around me, to my community. And for me, my reluctance or fear around that. So really valuable. As Tiaho said, we are involved with a small empathy circle, cafe style group on Thursday afternoons our time, which was good, but it was great, but illustrated, we didn't have a facilitator. Nobody had taken on the role of facilitation. So when the opportunity to face up to a challenge came, it seemed to slide by. And I think that was an opportunity missed. So I'm here, I'm awake, I'm looking forward to this morning. It's good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And Renata, you're up, followed by Michelle.
I missed last week as well. And this week I did get in touch with my buddy, but I haven't heard back yet. But I had a chat with Larry, a bit shorter than a 15 minutes thing. It was nice. I did try to do an empathy circle with my family, my mother, my sister, my son. It didn't work at all. At the beginning, they were following it, but after a while, I was like, "Can we just talk?" They just didn't. Yeah, it was a bit of a shame, really, but yeah, I tried. And I have a group of friends who are interested, but we just can't find the time at the moment to do it. Everybody seems to be busy, different times. So I'll keep on trying with that.
Thank you, Renata. So Michelle, followed by Bill, please.
Yeah, good morning or afternoon or evening or wee hours of the morning. I think some of you are brave. I had an empathy circle that I facilitated on Saturday, I think it was. Oh gosh, my brain. And it went, thank you, Graham, for helping me with that too. Graham was present, which was wonderful. It gave me some sort of comfort and confidence in that I had a backup, which was wonderful. And I think it went fairly well. I had a buddy call earlier in the week, I think on Tuesday. I apologize to my buddy for this week that I didn't reach out to, but I will. But I had a great conversation with Tiaho, who was actually my buddy from the week previous. So I'm kind of playing catch up, but it was a really good conversation. It, like she mentioned, it wasn't like the traditional empathy circle structure, but it was a really neat conversation. I really enjoyed it. So check.
Thank you, Michelle. And it's Bill, you're up, followed by Dean, please.
Well, I've been doing some empathy circle trainings and that I've been really enjoying. I'm also doing an empathy circle in schools, trying to see if we can get it introduced as a practice in schools. So that's an ongoing, process. And kind of focusing on the empowerment issue, the revolutionary empowerment issue of empathy circles, in the sense that, well, I guess empowering individuals rather than making them subservient to some ethos or person or something like that. And that's been quite fascinating for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And so Dean, you're up, followed by Larry.
I have been slightly remiss with my empathy call buddies, but I do plan to be catching up on every single one of them. I have been busy doing empathy circles with the Global XR, and also running circles on the actions that I've been undertaking over the weekend with the Earth Marches. So that's why I've been slightly time poor, but I will be catching up on all these people, and I really look forward to doing the buddy calls with them all, because I know they're all going to be very interesting interactions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And Larry, followed by Michelle.
Okay, so I've had a relatively peaceful week, and I'm really enjoying making buddy calls and empathy circles, and I'm just blown away by the power of empathy. And I hope we never make it a religion, that we make it a way of life practice, not some kind of an idolized thing, but we really, really practice it. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. So Michelle, followed by Celine.
Thanks so much, Graham. Yeah, I've been empathy bathing really for the last few weeks. It's been a bit of a raw few weeks, and I'm realizing that I can just feel the difference in community that practices empathy. It's just it's the deepest medicine, and I'm really, really grateful to people in in this group that both welcome me across into the Monday group, and also just for the warmth of welcome back, and also the kindness in the last few weeks. And I feel blessed, really, really. It's just, I'm so grateful for it. It's gorgeous. Oh.
Thank you, Michelle. And so Celine, followed by Edwin, please.
Well, I am really pleased with the empathy buddy call that I had last week. I really enjoyed our connection, and thought we were, real and vulnerable and with each other, and also enjoyed the contact. And I am working with a group that has asked for a class on empathy circles within a nonviolent communication context. And this is coming out of Mexico, so I'll be doing it in Spanish. So I'm a different challenge, but I'm excited about it. And I'm very happy to be here. And I love that I am in the presence of you activists with XR. It means a lot to me. And I bow to you. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you, Celine. So Edwin, followed by myself.
Yeah, so I had a couple of really good empathy buddy calls, and in the empathy buddy call, it's always so amazing to me if everyone comes in with the intention of staying with the empathic process, how we can work through, misunderstandings or conflict or different issues. So if you can just be present, have that attention, and it's like anything can be worked out with a sense of, connection and warmth and, moving forward constructively. So I'm always kind of amazing how that can work. The other thing is I'm working tomorrow, having an empathy cafe that I'm hosting. It's going to be something like 60 to 100 people there. I've put out a call. A lot of people here have agreed, are coming to support that. So kind of pretty excited about that. It's quite a biggest cafe if it turns out that way that I've done. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Edwin. And from me, this week has been a blur, just a total blur. And there are two names which come to mind. One was Dean, and I don't know whether he was actually my assigned empathy buddy, but I knew that Dean was very, very busy anyway. So my thoughts were with you, Dean. And the other one was Michelle. And I intended to call you, but that never realized. And so my apologies, my thoughts to you anyway. I had a really very, very interesting empathy circle. I didn't facilitate it. It was facilitated by Sam Lee. And it was with people who were there to study and participate in an NVC manner. And they used the practice of the empathy circle. And that was just so instructive. Watching people who are coming from a somewhat different realm, trying to learn to relax and reflect. And so that was really exciting experience. And of course, Larry was there. Thank you, Larry. The other one is that I'm trying to set up an empathy circle in the locality, so geographically based rather than globally based. And I've let that slide, whatever, through not really knowing how to move it along. But I had one reply this week and another one which came through my contact with Dustin Berry. And there's a possibility that we set up an empathy circle. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to tomorrow as well with the Rebel group. So thank you all. And we're over to the next section, which I'm also leading. So just give me a few seconds here.
It's actually Dean. He's doing the feedback.
On to you then, Dean. Thank you.
You need to do it kind of short, Dean. Just.
So I'll speak to two of the points, seeing as we're running a bit tight on time. But one point is when you're running circles during actions, you'll actually be surprised by how opening it up is to people, because you'll do it with one person, you'll think, okay, that's just the one-on-one. And then suddenly you'll have people coming towards you to be actively reflected and listened from nowhere. You're suddenly inundated, like I was at the weekend, with people coming towards me asking, oh, can you do some reflective listening to me, please? Because actually that presence of being heard grounds you in the moment and helps you get through the times of strife and struggle. The other point that was raised was, what do we do with people that have been sent to a circle and not actually come to the circle? Well, literally, we just welcome them in. We get them grounded in the process. We listen to them. And then we check in with them at the end. How was the process for them? Because if they've expressed that the fact that they've come here under duress, then we need to acknowledge the fact that they've been here under duress. And then we ask them, is there any way we could have actually been more welcoming, just to be open to the inclusion, because we are an inclusive and welcoming, empathic new culture that we're building. So those are the 2 points that came up, the 2 questions. I'll pass on now to the next person, who is Michelle.
Oh, thanks so much, Dean. So today, so we're moving on to the breakout section. So today we'll devote all of our time in the breakout circles to giving you time to practice facilitation. And so we won't do the how-to. So each facilitator will set the challenge level they desire. So none, low, medium, or high. Then set the topic and keep time. So 3 minutes to deal with the challenges. And we'll end our breakout rooms with a 30-minute debrief in the main room. Look.
Okay, so yeah, we're set to go into our breakout rooms. With the number of people that we have, it'll be Dean will facilitate one. You have 3 participants. Room 2 is Larry with 3 participants. Room 4 is Celine, supported by Michelle. And you'll have 2 participants, so you can give the participants, more time for doing their empathy circle. And then room 5 will be with Bill, and you'll have 3 participants. And Graham, you have 2 participants in your group, and I'll be with you in that, and we'll stay here in this group. And I'll give a 10-minute heads up before we come back, before we come back to the full group. So with that, I'm going to open the rooms, and we'll see you there. So we're just 4 of us in this group, and Graham had a little concern about giving challenges, so I'm here to give help with challenges to make your life miserable.
And so that's what you call a health warning.
No, did I miss something earlier, as in set the challenge level? I've never heard of it before.
Well, the idea is, do you want no challenges, or do you want a low level of challenge?
I still don't understand what you mean, because.
Oh, okay. Well, the idea is that you can get some people disrupting the process.
I see.
And it helps you as a facilitator to experience those disruptions in a safe environment, and cope with them or not, as the case may be, but become familiar with some kind of disturbance.
It was in the email. There was a link, Empathy Circle Training Challenges. Yes, shame. And there's a catalog of a whole bunch of different challenges. I just put the link in there if you want to review them quickly. Yeah.
Just to give you an idea, Tiaho, some of those challenges may be people talking out of turn, or they may be adding judgments to whatever's going on, or they dislike the structure that we have. There are all sorts of little reasons, but they essentially come outside of the process. So that's what we mean, Tiaho.
Thank you.
And the idea is that, correct me if I'm wrong, we will continue until on the hour. So that's almost an hour and a half from now, Edwin. Good. So that as the two trainees, Tiaho and Joelle, you've got, let's say, by the time we actually settle down, that's an hour and 45 minutes. Hour and 15 minutes. So if...
No, it's an hour and a half. We have the full.
Okay, so it's an hour and a half. So
Mhm.
that's, you have each an hour and a quarter. And after each trainee will do, let's say, minimum of 5 minutes review of what's going on. And I would actually put that as slightly more. So who would like to start facilitating?
I don't really want to, but but I'll go. But I was wondering, Graham, you mentioned one of the challenges being somebody offering, I can't remember if I'm remembering the words correctly, somebody offering a judgment.
Yes, or opinion of some kind.
I was wondering if you and Edwin could model what that looked like, you know, like if there was a way of intervening on that other than just empathy.
Well, can we rephrase your request into a
Yeah.
question and say, while you're facilitating, you can ask me and Edwin to interject some opinions.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
You want some really tough ones, or do you just want something that's sort of low level?
Lower level, but good, you know, good to be challenged.
Okay.
But aren't you unsure, Joelle? What I heard Joelle ask for was a modeling of that kind of interjection with the judgment thrown in there. So it's like, was it the empathic listening that deals with it, or some other technique? That's what I got out of her.
Yes.
Could I model that real quick? Just like if Graham spoke to me, he's saying, okay, we're going to be doing this. And I say, Graham, you're a real idiot. You know, I reflect back and I say, you're really an idiot or something. If I give a judgment, I throw a judgment in my reflection, or even that's a negative judgment. It could be a positive judgment. You're amazing. You know, it's like what you're saying is absolutely amazing. So, right, that's a positive judgment. So it can be a negative or a positive judgment. Instead of just reflecting back maybe what Graham had said, I maybe reflect it back and then throw in a judgment or only do the judgment. So, and you just want to hear a reflection. You don't want the listener to be, you know, throwing in judgments.
So does that answer your question, Tiaho and Joelle?
I think I'm still getting clear on it, and assuming that I'll probably get clearer on it just in the process.
And I figured that it's a matter of reflecting back what, you know, if I was the listener, or no, if I was the speaker, I can't remember, whatever, I reflect back. But as the facilitator, I might pause the circle for a moment and clarify that the way that our process is to not put in judgments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's good, Tiaho. Yeah. And if you imagine, Tiaho, that you were a facilitator and Joelle had asked for a modeling, and I did not reflect or answer in any way the modeling, but instead I said, wait and see, we'll show you how it goes. So you then, as a facilitator, you sort of said, now come on, Graham, you didn't answer the question. You asked to model it, and why didn't you model it? So that's basically the process that we could have used in that instance. So at the risk of talking too much, Joelle, off you go.
All right. Am I doing the timing or are you doing the timing? Oh, that's right. I'm the timer because I'm the facilitator. Yep. Okay, got it. Getting my brain on board here. Okay. Welcome everybody to our empathy circle. I'm assuming that I'm going to go with the assumption that all of you are new to this, even though I know you're not. You in this process, you're going to have some different experiences depending on what role you're having. One of the wonderful experiences you're going to have is to have somebody be an active listener to you. You will be speaking and having somebody really listening and reflecting back what you're saying. As the speaker, that when you're speaking, if you make sure that you pause, that's really helpful to your active listener. If you speak for a really long time, it can be hard to reflect. So just keep in mind to make some pauses. If you're the active listener, you get to have the experience of really sitting with somebody with empathy and attention. And you're gonna just try to reflect back to them what they're saying, perhaps what they seem to be feeling. And then the other two roles, or the other two people are going to be in the role of silent listeners, which really kind of supports this whole empathy process. So we're going to have 3 minutes for each person to be speaking. And then obviously the active listener will be doing that for 3 minutes. If you're the active listener, you will then get to be the speaker. So I'll help everybody with that process. Another thing that you can do when you're the speaker is you can re-clarify what you're talking about. Your listener may kind of miss some of the nuances of what you're trying to say. So it's great if you just clarify what you're trying to get across. That also can help if you're an active listener, because just sit in a really relaxed state and you're listening. And if you're worried about missing anything, you won't necessarily, because your person will clarify for you. So I am, as the facilitator, I'm going to start with modeling the active listening. So I'm looking for somebody to volunteer starting as a speaker for 3 minutes. Does anybody want to volunteer that?
I have a question. Are we having any topic, or do we just, what are we talking
Oh, great
about?
question. Thank you. So you can talk about really what's alive for you in this moment. It can be anything, or it could be about what's challenging for you in work meetings. Is that clear? Yeah. All right. Who wants to start speaking?
I would be happy to speak.
Great. I will be your active listener, Graham.
Thank you, Joelle. This little situation that I described, Joelle, is not really a work situation. It falls into the category of an empathy buddy session. But nonetheless, I find that all sorts of things that took place in that meeting were similar to what you'd experience in a work setting.
So Graham, you're talking about that this isn't necessarily purely a work situation, but it it had some similarities, and it was in a buddy call type that that brought up some similar challenges. I don't know if challenge is the right word for you.
Anyway, this person I was with we're talking about a month and a day ago, had asked me, because we got some unfinished business, and she asked me to write a letter to her and put some of my thoughts in a letter. And this is often a dangerous situation for me, is putting things in writing or communicating through the channel of writing. But I did. I took up the invitation and I sent her the letter. And I'll stop there.
So this was a empathy buddy that happened a month and a day ago. And this person asked you to write to them, and that for you is often a sort of dangerous, not necessarily fruitful way of communicating with someone, but that you decided to go ahead and write the letter to the person.
Yes. And so I've sent off this letter. It took me, it was very painful writing it. And so I had lots of expectations when I joined the meeting yesterday with her. And things went wrong from the get-go.
So you went ahead and wrote the letter, and it was a very painful process for you to write that. And then you just had your empathy call with this person, and you went into it with some expectations, and it did not go well for you.
That's right. And we had a situation where just to sort of give a general name for it, was that she considered my letter a fix-it letter, I'll fix you kind of letter. Anyway, she was very defensive and didn't want to go into that conversation realm, but wanted to talk about something else. And I'll stop there.
So she considered this letter that you wrote a fix-it letter, and it sounds like she thought that you were trying to fix her, and also in the empathy call, there sounds like there was you felt a lack of listening.
Yes, in a sense, not so much lack of listening, but there was defensiveness.
Yes.
And avoidance, okay?
Yeah.
And then on my side, my anxiety was associated with the appropriateness or inappropriateness of my letter, how it landed. I wanted to know all of these things because that dilemma was very important to me. And I'll stop there.
So you clarified for me that it wasn't just about listening or not listening, that it was defensiveness and avoiding, and that you had a lot of anxiety about handling this well.
Yes, indeed. And I was anxious as to how this had landed, and she was not wanting to discuss any of this. So we ended up being in, what's the word? I hear, Joelle, I've got it. We ended up in a kind of big disconnect. There was the undercurrent was conflict.
So in that process and feeling anxiety, there was a big disconnect for the two of you.
Yes. And
Yeah.
thank you, Joelle. And with that, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. So, Graham, now, hold on. So I was the listener. So then I choose somebody else to listen to me. Is that correct?
Yes, and you become the
Okay.
active speaker.
All right. All right. Edwin, would you be my listener? And I'll set the timer.
Sure, listening.
I think I felt some anxiety being the listener for Graham I think maybe the emotional content that he was sharing about a difficult empathy call and the experience of avoidance and defensiveness. Like I had anxiety about my own experiences of that, and it felt like that sort of a little bit got in the way of my listening empathy skills.
Yeah, I have that feeling sometimes too. I can really relate to that. Yeah.
Right. Edwin, another thing that you could do in your active listening is can you share a little bit about what you heard me say?
Oh,
Can you
so
reflect
what you're
that
saying?
back to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I heard that you've had anxiety in empathy circles, and so hearing Graham's anxiety sort of reminded you of your own anxieties that you've had.
Right. Yeah. And I think in the process of being his listener, I feel like that anxiety interfered. It kind of blocked my sitting with him with empathy.
Yeah. So you're noticing that when your own anxiety came out, that sort of inhibited you being able to listen to him and his anxieties, and so you're just kind of sharing that.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
You know, it didn't bother me while you were reflecting. I actually really appreciated it.
Oh, thank you, Graham. See, I'm anxious about the challenges. I think, about there's something too for me about setting limits with somebody in an empathy circle while they're opening feelings to me. So that feels like a kind of tender thing to do, like Graham's sharing about feelings. And then I feel like limit setting it's kind of a tender thing to do if somebody's opening their heart.
So you're really kind of feeling a little anxious about facilitating challenges because, hey, somebody's sort of opening themselves and you're having to put a limit on that. And that feels sort of very tender because you're sort of closing them in on sort of an authentic sharing, a vulnerable sharing.
Right.
Makes you feel a little anxious to do that.
Right, exactly. And I understand that sort of the limit setting provides kind of a safe container for everybody. So not setting limits is not necessarily where I want to take it either, because then it feels there's sort of an instability in the sharing situation that I want to support the stability of the facilitation and the sharing.
So you're seeing there's a reason for having some boundaries in the sense that if you don't have them, it creates an instability, and you're wanting to create sort of that sense of instability. So you're kind of have a bit of ambivalence between the two different approaches.
Exactly. And I just realized that I forgot to hit start, and so I'm guessing that I'm at time.
Okay. So you didn't do the time, and you're just guessing that your time is up.
But I think I should be done. Thank you, Edwin.
Okay,
I
you feel fully heard.
heard.
I'll speak to Tia then next.
Yeah, I'm listening, Edwin.
Yeah, that's the thing with setting limits. I'm pretty good about that, because I see that there's a sense of equality too with the limits, right? That people just start putting in their own stuff, and then they kind of take control. And so I kind of hold the sense of mutual empathy and equality of time and space. Yeah, guides me.
So yeah, setting limits is an egalitarian thing.
Mm-hmm.
Time and
Yeah, and then the other thing is that we've come in with an agreement, like, hey, let's all agree to this process. And, all I'm doing is keeping us to our agreement that we've all agreed to. So if you didn't agree to this, you probably shouldn't be here.
yeah, okay. So it's an acknowledgement also of the agreement that we've made at the beginning. And it's clear that if people actually don't agree with that in practice, then the question is, do you want to be here?
Yeah, and the other thing is when people kind of go in and there's an agreement and they start changing the agreement norms, then the whole norms like, oh, the norms don't mean anything anymore. So let's just, totally change the whole dynamic. And then we just get into normal culture. That's a lot of the normal culture is just people not listening to each other. Who has the largest, strongest voice dominates. So we just get back to our usual possible, cultural dysfunction.
So losing the agreement means that we revert back to cultural norms, and basically that means not listening to each other and having a dominant voice or voices.
Yeah. And I did want to mention that I came into this circle because before we had our breakout room, and Graham said, I find it so hard to give challenges. It's like he was exactly the same with, what Joelle is saying. It's like, people are being open and tender and all this. And how do I interrupt that? He feels really bad. So I came in here to bring in some challenges to kind of help with that.
Okay, so you joined this circle to support Graham also in the challenge making creation.
Yeah, exactly. Because he has that same sort of tenderness around Wanda that Joelle's kind of sort of mentioning. I guess I want to add that part too.
Yeah, okay. And so there's a kind of a similarity between the sense of limitations that Joelle and Graham have expressed around dealing with people's tenderness and their sharing, and how to deal with the challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks, Theo.
Okay. Okay, so my empathic listener, please, I guess, Joelle, please be my empathic listener.
Yes, I'm listening.
My buddy call was interesting in terms of, I realized pretty quickly that that my buddy either didn't have the capacity or didn't want to exercise it in terms of empathic listening.
So you noticed in your buddy call that, and you noticed it pretty quickly, that your buddy didn't have the capacity for that empathic listening.
Or they didn't want to exercise it.
Or they didn't want to exercise it. They might have had the capacity, but at that moment it wasn't chosen.
Choosing not to. And so to begin with, I did set the boundaries, or not set them, but as in have a conversation around how we're going to do our call, and like establishing the process, like co-establishing the process, but as Edwin said, the normative practice slid in.
So you started with some clear communication of the process and the boundaries, and yet what you noticed happening was what Edwin had referred to as the sort of the normative process kind of slid into what was happening.
Yeah, I wanted to stick to the process, but in the biggest sense, I felt like I was actually able to empathize with my buddy more by hearing her desire for inquiry rather than practice the process of empathic listening.
So you really wanted to stick with the process of the empathy exchange, but in that process of being empathetic with your buddy, you realized that her process of inquiry was kind of where she needed to be, and your empathy had a place in that interaction.
And I did organically like reflect back to her what I was hearing, but I really don't think that she had that she was able to do that for me. I didn't experience it.
So you feel like you in that exchange, you were able to offer empathy to and for her, but for you didn't feel like you received empathy from her.
Especially the listening aspect, like the empathic listening.
In the empathic listening, especially. Yeah.
And I guess at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. But the last thing, in closing, I checked in by another communication platform, like a texting one, to see if she had actually heard what, if she was able to reflect something back, and she related that her health condition actually impacted the way she's able to process thinking. And so that was really valuable to hear.
So you checked in via text, wanting to know whether she did hear you, and you were able to discover in that communication that her health condition impacted the way she was able to focus and listen and reflect to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Joelle. I feel fully heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I choose do I choose a listener?
No, Tiaho. Joelle was the active listener, and she's now the active speaker. So you become a silent listener.
Yeah, I thought that maybe she would facilitate.
This is beautiful.
Hey, butt out. Let Joelle facilitate, Graham. Stop interrupting you. You bunch of mansplaining here.
All right, all of you play rolling your naughty empathy circle rascals. Graham, would you be my listener?
Be my pleasure, Joelle.
I'm appreciating I'm appreciating people that have high empathy skills also attempting to be challenging. It's kind of amusing to me.
And you're finding this rather amusing because there seems to be a kind of clash between those who've got high empathic skills or high empathic interest, and then merging that with creating challenges.
Yeah, yes, exactly. But I think as I talk about, I'm still talking about and thinking about how it's maybe an extra challenge for me to set limits with people in the empathy process, that I'm getting clearer about how important it is if I'm gonna take on that role as a facilitator, I really need to take on a willingness to provide the structure and safety for people. And that's feeling a little bit more settled in me somehow.
And you know, I'm actually having difficulty here because I think everything is just too analytical. And anyway, I also understand that you're beginning to realize that limits and boundaries are very valuable because they create a safe space for people.
Exactly. And Graham, I wanted to clarify for you in your thoughts about things being too analytical, that's a great thing to bring when you have your time to be a speaker. So if you want to just hold on to those thoughts about the process and share that when you're the speaker, that's a perfect time for that.
Yeah, my memory doesn't last that long, Joelle.
That's all right. That's all right. I can remind you again.
Thank you, Joelle. I'll call upon you. Yeah.
Let's see, what else? Yeah. And I think what Tiaho was saying, that to be in a sort of empathy buddy call with a person who has some limitations to their sort of listening and empathy would be challenging. Especially since there was an agreement to show up for each other that way. So that sort of made me kind of wonder how I would deal with that.
And so you're reflecting on, okay, thank you. And so you're reflecting on what Tiaho was describing about being in an empathy session with somebody who wasn't accepting the kind of reciprocal nature of the empathy circle. And so that would have been very challenging. And not only would it have been challenging from that aspect, but that she'd have come into the circle with that kind of intentional agreement. And
yeah, exactly. I feel fully heard. Thank you, Graham. And you did some excellent challenges. Go get them. So you get to choose your listener now, Graham.
Okay. Edwin, would you be so kind and be my listener?
Listening.
Just like Joelle said or outlined, that there's it's really difficult to sort of mix the challenges and genuine empathy processes, and that it forms a kind of conundrum, almost one that you can laugh at, but which is very painful to do. I'll stop there.
Yeah, so you're seeing the difficulty of mixing, empathy and challenges, and there's sort of, creates kind of a conundrum, and it has a real humor to it too.
Yes, it has, and it's not so much my humor, but I'm just reflecting the the humor that Joelle was seeing.
Yeah, so it's not so much humor for you, but just wanting to acknowledge the humor that Joelle was seeing in it.
Yes, and this makes me think of an Empathy Buddies session I had with a guy called Janos. Janos is living in England, but he's a Hungarian and does not really speak, doesn't speak English comfortably. I'll hold there.
So it's just this is bringing up a memory of someone that you were with who doesn't speak English comfortably, and sort of maybe some challenges that were there.
Yes, and I followed what Tiaho describes as a process of inquiry. So I was asking questions or controlling the conversation, if you like, and putting him in a position where he was doing all the talking.
So you created sort of a dynamic where you were asking questions where he would do the talking. So it was kind of a questioning approach with you kind of in charge of it.
Yeah, and I felt very guilty after doing that. And we had an Empathy Buddy session around about a week later. And the process of the empathy circle was adhered to. And maybe with much looser timings, but nonetheless, the process was adhered to, and that was so much more comfortable.
Yeah, so you felt some guilt about that approach and then did it again, but this time kept the structure and felt much better about following the structure.
Yeah, and for me, the comparison between how he felt guilty because he was doing all the talking. I felt guilty because I was doing all the questioning. And then when we followed the process, both of us felt good.
Yeah, so you had a feeling of guilt because you were sort of doing the questioning and he felt like he was doing all the talking. So it just felt like you just had the feelings of guilt. And then when you followed the process, it just felt really good. And
indeed. Thank you very much, Edwin. And on that note, thank you, Joelle. We've got roughly about 5 minutes to review the process. And to kick it off, can you describe what your experiences were, how you felt, all your takeaways from this little session?
I just feel like it's really helpful for me to just be in the process practicing, that there's just no other way, that just the learning is just so much more informative than maybe just reading directions about it, like actually experiencing the challenges, experiencing the feelings that I have while the challenge comes up and I kind of muddle through how to deal with it. It's very helpful. And there was a couple of times where I think I was slow in intervening and setting boundaries, but I kind of see that and have a sort of note to myself that I would like to find a way to intervene in a timely manner so that things don't kind of go on and on and on and it scrunches other people's time. Yeah, super helpful process.
Great. And Tiaho, what are your experiences of Joelle's facilitation?
I'm pretty accepting of how people do things, but if I was a novice participant in an empathy circle, I would feel, I guess, much safer with the demonstration of clear facilitation. Yeah. It's like, oh, so that's how it's done. Oh, that's what judgment is like in the process, and we're holding that. And it's not judgment when I actually get to speak it myself. etc., or whatever. But yeah, a gentle style, and I guess I heard your introduction, and in my mind I was going off into, oh my God, I can't remember what it is that I'm going to say, and it just seems like such a pile of words that it's like, what does it all mean? But I guess, yeah, I just trust that things unfold anyway. So overall, I enjoyed being in the circle.
Thank you, Tiaho. And so, Edwin, what feedback would you give Joelle?
I would just mention that in this part, you didn't need to do the intro because it was more about just setting the topic, which you'd forgotten, which is, it's fine. But and setting the time limits, and then it was the challenges. It's more about the challenges. So if Tiaho doesn't want to do the how-to, that's fine. Just otherwise, yeah, it's. I can just see all the learning, the learning by doing, it's just like it's a little playful, it's, we're here, it's fun. I enjoy kind of throwing challenges out there. So, and it seemed like you did address them, you don't always need to jump right in on a one. So I felt, like, oh, okay, she's keeping things on track for me. So as a participant, it's like, I felt, oh, okay, so this is working. This is, yeah.
Thank you, Edwin. And for me, Joelle, I didn't actually interrupt you on on your how-to, because, like we're talking about, doing interrupts is just as cruel as hell. But anyway, I enjoyed your description. And this is no reflection on you whatsoever, but there is a conundrum, and I used that word before, but Tiaho talks about it being a jumble of words, and that's no reflection on you, but really, that is how it is somehow. And maybe if we could just come down to some very, and this is not a recommendation, I'm talking just aloud to the world, maybe if we could come down to just a few sentences about some of the principles. You talked about speaking so that you can be heard in small chunks, and listening, and then after 3 minutes, you'd switch roles. And so almost keep it as simple as that, and then you demonstrate in the first 2 settings how that goes. So that's long-winded. We're running away with time. I actually felt that your gentle style was very good. And the fact that you didn't respond to one of my interrupts was, in fact, maybe 2 of my interrupts, was also instructive, because when I did it, and I know I'm deliberately trying to put out a challenge, because you didn't respond to it, I felt like a jerk. And that's a strong feeling. But I certainly got some, it's a strong word, but I had those feelings of, oh, I'm not conforming to a norm. So, and your body language was reasonably expressive that I was violating a norm. And so you really don't have to say much. And maybe what I'm saying is a little bit counterintuitive or against the flow of feedback, but essentially, our little meetings manage themselves, and I thank you, and I felt very safe in your hands. Thank you, and I apologize for the role inversion that we went through when I was. So, Joelle, thank you, and Tiaho, you're on.
Can I take a really quick break?
That's a really good idea. Go for it. So can we all take a break for 2 minutes?
Sure.
Okay.
Whoops, get my phone going. All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to be facilitating the next part of our session, and we've got a 3-minute time agreement for each of the empathic speaking phases. And the challenge that I'd like to have would be, I don't know, let's just say, surprise me. And the topic will be the last communication that had tension around it, or even open conflict, or whatever is uppermost for yourself. Since we're all familiar with the process, I won't need to describe that, and I invite someone from our circle to be the first speaker. I will signal time as well with my, is that clear enough for everyone?
Yes, yes, indeed.
Okay, cool.
I'll be your first speaker, if I may, please, Tiaho.
Okay. And you'll invite your active empathic listener. Great.
How about you being my empathic listener?
Great. I'll start the time.
So, I remember in our check-ins earlier today that Renata talked of having an empathy circle with her family, and they all wanted to just talk freely, you know, and that creates a tension for me. Not what Renata says, but that situation.
Yeah, so you reflected on the tension that arose in you when Renata related her family empathy circle and the breaking away from the empathic process.
Yes, indeed, Tiaho. And
I can really identify with that, Graham, because I'd kind of like to do the same thing here. I mean, this reflecting and reflecting stuff gets a little bit tiring after a while. You know, maybe.
I'll jump in there, Edwin.
Yeah.
Part of our process is that the speaker gets to speak in an uninterrupted way, and the empathic listener reflects that back. And everyone else's role is to be to be a silent listener.
Okay.
So when it's your turn, you'll be able to contribute your thoughts.
So in other ways, you want me to shut up until it's my turn. Is that it?
If you can hold those thoughts, that would be useful. Yeah.
Okay.
And thanks, Graham. When you're ready.
And the areas of tension for me are with two people in particular. One is an ex who's kind of in and out of my life, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with reflective listening.
Okay, so you have an ex in your life who is not into the empathic listening process, but she's part of your life still.
Yeah, and the other one is a guy who calls me up, and all he does is talk. And he talks and talks and talks. He talks for about 45 minutes until I'm exhausted, and I say I have to find something else to do.
Okay, so the other kind of challenge in your life is someone who calls and talks to the point that you feel exhausted.
Yeah. And
now I just signal that time is nearly up.
Oh, already done that. Okay, can I just finish my thoughts?
Sure.
And the thought is that it's very difficult to change the habits of communication with the people around us. And they tend to keep us trapped in old communication styles.
Okay, so it sounds like it's challenging and difficult to establish new forms of communication with the people that we're familiar with, the people around us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Thank you, Tiaho.
Okay. I've just changed my timer because I set it for 3 hours. Not 3 minutes. Lucky I watched it though. And all right, so I'll invite, let's see, Edwin to be my empathic listener.
Okay.
Starting the timer. Yeah, okay, so the last time that I felt tension was during our empathy circle, the X11B one, and I thought it was really interesting. Ron related that I thought I heard him say something about that for him the lack of facilitation was the issue. I'll pause there.
So there was some tension in your the 11 series, this cafe that you're holding. Sounded like there was some tension there. And then Ron was saying, hey, the reason there was tension was because of the lack of facilitation.
Yeah, it just bubbled up a couple of times. I thought it was really insightful that was how he experienced it. Whereas for me, it's the tension can arise no matter what. And it's up to whoever's in the room to respond to that, like in my own sovereignty.
So Ron was saying that he thought the tension was coming up because of the lack of facilitation. And you're saying, oh, tension can come up at any point, even if you had great facilitation. And that you just need to be able to just speak to it or address it. Something about sovereignty. I didn't having so the responsibility. Everyone has responsibility for maybe naming it or addressing it.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Edwin. Yeah.
Oh, I guess I'm good at this, huh? I get. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting when people have different understandings. I guess the last thing is that in my buddy call, I was surprised that my buddy still wasn't clear about the process, even up to this point in having buddy calls.
Mm-hmm. So you're surprised that your buddy still didn't have sort of the sense of the process even after all this time, and it sounds like you're sort of seeing that people have sort of these different skills, different awarenesses, and it's kind of varied among different people.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I was actually concerned about her capacity to facilitate circles. But that's not I'm not responsible for her either.
Yeah, so you're a bit worried about her capacity for being able to facilitate empathy circles. If she wasn't able to just do the process with you, you're kind of questioning if she could facilitate them, but you're just not going to take responsibility. It's not your responsibility to deal with it.
Yeah, thanks, Edwin. I feel fully heard.
Okay, great. Joelle, can I speak to you?
I'm listening.
Yeah, tension is all. There seems to be tension all the time, and I always have a little. I feel like I live in sort of a low level of tension all the time in communication. So yeah, that's an interesting topic.
So you're really feeling like you're living in this kind of ongoing. There's a low level of tension. In things, and I noticed you sort of moving as if moving that tension.
Yeah,
maybe.
It's level of tension, anxiety about life, existential tension. Yeah, it's stress. Yeah, so it's just there sort of seems to be sort of a low level of that ongoing.
So tension, anxiety, stress about life. It seems to be an ongoing thing, and I'm sensing that you sense this. It's not just sort of your experience, but sort of a generalized experience across a lot of groups, possibly.
I didn't think of it in that term. I see a humor in it too. There's sort of a humor. Maybe that's the aspect. Is it is kind of funny. It is kind of humorous that that there is this quality.
You're seeing the humor.
This tension is ugly. It really is ugly. And so Edwin must live in a different world to me. Perhaps it comes with California air,
Thanks, Graham. Just to remind us that that in the empathy process, it's important to honor our role of silent listeners and allow the communication between Edwin and Joelle to happen in an uninterrupted way.
Uninterrupted?
Yeah, so as a silent listener, what we're doing is we're observing and really listening deeply to the sharing between Edwin and Joelle, and we can empathize with what's being said, but it's important that we hold those thoughts to ourselves, and knowing that we have an opportunity if we're invited to be when we're in the role of speaker, to share our thoughts and feelings later.
How long will it be before I'm the speaker?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. What was that?
I'm quite impatient here, When am I going to be the speaker?
So Edwin, maybe I could just get back to reflecting to you that you were, you may need to clarify because I got a little bit sidetracked in my listening, but you were really kind of sitting with the humor in this tension that you're seeing all over the place, low level tension.
Yeah, and I'm feeling some tension now too. So it's like, we're talking about tension, and this feels kind of tense with Graham interrupting me, so I'm trying to be vulnerable. I'm trying to share, spill my guts here, and then having, Graham interrupt is kind of disruptive. Feels like very tense. I'm really sensing a lot of irritation, tension come up.
So you're feeling tension in this situation after feeling interrupted. And there's some vulnerability in you having a turn, being able to share, and that creates some tension and for you.
Yeah. So I don't want to talk anymore. So I'm done. I feel fully heard.
So you're feeling done, but you're feeling fully heard.
Heard enough.
Enough for now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was time. Just to pause for a moment, and in my facilitator role, how much time have we got to continue?
Roughly another 20 minutes.
Okay. Well, before Joelle chooses her next active empathic listener, I think it's a good reminder to reflect on the different roles. So especially the role of there was some desire on your part, Graham, to reflect back however, we are in the role of silent listeners when we're not doing the speaking or the active empathic listening. And I find that one way that really works well for me is when I put when I mute myself, that means I have to think actually about, have I got something to say, or am I actually just listening? So everyone who's in a silent listener role, I invite you to put your microphone on mute. And so that leaves Joelle as to invite the next person to be active and listen.
All right. Tiaho, would you be my listener?
Yes, I'm listening.
I actually was appreciating the experience of Graham's interruption. And I feel like part of the issue kind of got worked on by Edwin sharing his feelings. That was really sort of helpful and healing in itself.
So it was a useful experience with Graham's interruption, and seemed like there was some resolution with Edwin being able to articulate how he felt about it.
Right, like that was a kind of instructive limit setting in itself. And Edwin seemed to communicate, I sensed that he was not feeling fully complete in his feelings while he was saying he was done. But there's something really nice in this empathy circle, knowing that it can come around again, and that if he's not done, that it's his responsibility to share more.
Yes, so you noticed that Edwin was able to say that he was done, but you had a sense that they were still feeling there, and you're aware that everyone's self-responsibility means that even if that's what he is saying and there's an incongruence, that the way the process works is that it can come around again, so that will be present.
Yeah,
still.
yeah, exactly. And the I was just thinking back to your the topic, that the last tense kind of exchange I had was a work meeting, which I'm just feeling really kind of motivated to offer Empathy Circle to that group, because there's a lot of tension and not listening, or yeah, a lot of challenges.
So your work group seems like a really rich ground to offer the Empathy Circle process too. There's a lot of tension and challenge.
Yeah.
And that's time.
And time. Thank you, Tiaho.
You're welcome. I realize that it can be difficult to kind of conclude what we're saying, even though the time's up, and there's more to say. So now I'm in the role of speaker, and I invite Graham. Have I invited you to be my listener before? Not yet.
I can't remember, Tiaho.
Okay, let's go.
I would enjoy that. Thank you.
Okay, sweet. Let's put the time on, because, oops, cancel. Okay, so for the last week, I have really said no to a lot of people, and it's interesting because I think the empathic quality attracts people, and yeah, I've been saying no, I'm not available.
And you're reflecting on your week, and you paused, you really thought about that. And you have been saying no to a lot of people. And you kind of are observing that when you are empathic, it attracts people. And maybe that's been attracting too many people, and you've had to say no, or felt the courage to say no.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I can be generally empathic, and then I can also be like really consciously empathic. So there's that quality there regardless. But what I'm enjoying about the empathic process is my internal empathy for my own needs.
And you describe yourself, Tiaho, as somebody who's generally empathic, but you can also be very empathic when circumstances require it. But really what is sort of uppermost in your memory, uppermost in your experience, is the idea that you can empathize with yourself. And this is powerful.
Yeah, it wasn't just an idea, that was actually my experience and enabling me to say no. I can also be quite, like challenging and fierce too.
And I think you corrected me, Tiaho, that it wasn't just an idea that this was valuable. This was actually your experience that empathizing for yourself was empowering you. And you were able to say no. And you acknowledge that you can also be quite tough when it comes to saying no.
Yeah, it's not that I said no, it's just like a quality that I can be. And completely completely reactive as well. And that's my time.
And you said it's not so much that you say no. Now I'm getting into unsure ground here, but it's not the idea so much that you could say no, but I have to summarize it in my own words, that you experienced the awareness of what's going on inside you, and you know your limits and your boundaries.
Yeah, yep, that's exactly right, Graham, and that's good enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiago. Joelle, would you be so kind and be my listener?
Yes, I'm listening.
About tension, one way or another, there's always tension in these little groups. But there's not the kind of tension where we're going to get up and kind of hit each other or bash each other or whatever. But there is some kind of tension, a low level tension, but it's always there.
So you're thinking about tension, and that there is always a level of tension in these groups, not the kind where there would be a physical altercation, but there is a tension that's often present.
Yeah, and for me, though I'm not really able to kind of quantify that, but I know that it's always there. But as time goes by, I'm feeling more and more comfortable with being able to handle that tension and realizing that that actually kind of motivates whatever's going on.
So you're seeing that the tension is not really something that you can quantify, but that it is always there. And you're feeling more comfortable or confident in it being there and actually something that can be worked with.
Yes, indeed. And one of the things that our process does is that it more often than not leaves threads hanging.
Mm-hmm.
And we had this situation when you were sharing about what was going on at work, and it's almost as if that raised a lot of questions in all of us, and they were unanswered and may never be answered.
So you brought up this sort of imagery or reality of a thread left hanging that seems to happen sort of in empathy circles in many different ways, but you specifically mentioned me talking about work, and it's sort of you had this sense of everybody wondering what else was what more was there.
Yes. And with that note of tension, I feel fully heard. The alarm must have heard me.
You're feeling fully heard by the alarm.
Thank you, Joelle. It's over to you now.
All right. Edwin, would you be my listener?
Listening.
I really like that those ideas of sort of acceptance of the tension and yeah, like kind of acknowledging it and embracing it instead of sort of assuming that it means that there's something that's gone wrong.
Yeah, so you're liking the idea of just being with tension, acknowledging the tension instead of seeing it as something that needs fixing or something's gone wrong. Sort of more of an acceptance,
right,
of it.
Right. And also the sort of that, you know, like Edwin, when you were role modeling, sort of, you were telling me that you were feeling done with your sharing, but sort of expressing with your mannerisms that you weren't completely done, but trusting that you left that thread hanging that you could come back around to. Yeah, I there's something complete in living with that tension and those threads that we can pick up.
Mm-hmm. So when I was speaking to you and there was this tension that was like, okay, this is complete for now, but we can come back around and sort of address it. And so knowing that you can come back around, sounds like you appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just thinking about bringing an empathy circle to my work group as a sort of an out, not within the work meeting, but as something that people could voluntarily participate in, and then hoping that it would grow into influencing what's happening in our work meetings.
So you're thinking of how to bring the empathy circle into the tension of your work meetings, and maybe it's starting outside of the work meeting with a few people and have it sort of slowly grow, and that'll be sort of like a starting point.
Yeah, exactly. Almost like there's this enormous glacier of tension that will slowly start to change over time.
So you're thinking of how to melt the glacier, and it's like, well, you start at some of the edges and sort of move slowly to melt it.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm feeling heard. Thank you, Edwin.
May I, as the overall facilitator, this is with a little trepidation, but I'm almost seeking Edwin's permission. I would like us to actually go into a discussion because I feel there's a lot to discuss. And in the last discussion with Joelle, we mopped up nearly 10 minutes to do this.
How much do we have then?
We only have 10 minutes, so I think just to be fair, we should get Tiaho's feedback on
that's
this.
That's what I would like to do.
Okay.
Tiaho, how do you feel about your session?
Holy crap. It's quite a juggling act. It's kind of trickier, the fact that, you know, if I'm in like a real life situation, I feel like I can be more kind of sort of more on point. Well, it flows better. It doesn't feel so clunky, whether that actually pans out that way or not. But my sense is that. But overall, yeah, grateful for the process that we're all part of.
And so, Joelle, how did you experience the session?
Yeah, it's nice to be with another person that's also learning, sort of watching Graham interrupt and Tiaho sort of watching you think like, how do I deal with this? And there he goes. Yeah, and I think the one thing I would say is, Tiaho, when you intervene with Graham, that it didn't, you don't have to, my experience of it was you didn't have to explain as much as you did, that you could have intervened and like all the other pieces of like Edwin sharing how he felt about being interrupted and Graham just interrupting, like that was instructive enough in itself. And that a lengthier explanation was not necessarily as important as just learning from the experience.
Yeah, that was my sense of it, that I felt like I was lecturing. But I was also aware that, like, if people were truly beginners, then that often it's not going to be, it's going to be more reactive. It's like, so, and not, yeah. So I think that's true as well. As in, how do you tell someone to get back in their corner and shut up, as you said, Graham, without being brutal about it? We're silent listeners, and now we're all going to be quiet.
And Joelle, I've got a question to you. You asserted yourself as the speaker, effectively overruling me and my interrupts, and you took back control of your speaking. What do you feel about that experience?
That felt pretty natural for me, because it felt like I just felt like I wanted to get back to Edwin, since I was sort of, I carried some responsibility in being his listener. I wanted to, it felt like it didn't feel like a faked or put on thing to just be like, I want to get back to what's going on with Edwin.
Sounds good. Edwin, what did you experience?
Yeah, I always wonder how to do good feedback. You know, it's a good process. I do try to say, you know, what happened to me, you know, and what was my experience when I was kind of I enjoyed your challenges, Graham. And then I was sort of role playing, you know, feeling hurt, feeling upset. That was kind of fun. I enjoy the role playing. I think we should do more actings. It's really a lot of fun. The one thing I did think of was what I try to do is keep the empathic process going. I think, Joel, you mentioned about the sort of a bit of lecturing and, you know, how do you do that? One sort of approach, I try to keep as much reflective listening going with as minimal sort of lecturing or explaining within the circle. So what I'll do is, if it would have been my turn, I would have kind of held off with the deep explanation. And when it came around to my turn, I would have spoken to Graham and explained all the stuff you explained and gotten a reflection on it. So that way it would have been done within the process. And then it also would sink in, I think sinks in deeper to the person like Graham, who's like, hey, I want to kind of break out of this process or whatever. So they have to reflect it back and they sort of take it in even more deeply. Plus it stays within the process. So that's just one sort of trick that I use. So, yeah.
Thanks, Edwin.
Yeah. That's it.
Thanks, Edwin.
Thanks,
For
Graham.
me, I feel you could have really been very brief with me. Certainly the second time I interrupted you, you could have said, Graham, and I would have got the message. Also, you could say to me, which you did, but without any supporting words, please put your microphone on mute. And because one of the irony here was the more you spoke, the more you gave me an opportunity to latch onto what you were saying. And so you're by talking too much, you were inviting me to, unwittingly, but inviting me to interject and continue the whole process.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because like my biggest fear around the whole facilitation was, because I can be really direct.
Direct, yeah.
Like that's one of my strengths. And so I was worried about overdoing it. And that's when I got all wordy and everything. So as difficult it is to kind of not get it right, it does make it memorable.
Edwin.
Yeah, one approach I use is I would say, start with an empathy. Graham, I hear you have something you're wanting to say. We really want to hear it, but can we just hear it when it's your turn? You know, so we empathize how important what you have to say is. We really want to hear it, and let's hear it during your turn, which is, so that's, yeah, that's some sort of an approach that I use too.
A nice package.
Yeah.
Package.
And another thought, Tiaho, is that the empathy circle has got a lot of bonding strength in it. So you can afford to be very, very blunt. I mean, I'm not discounting what Edwin says, but have more faith in being blunt, because there's strength in the circle.
Yeah, I guess that's different to like being in a circle and practicing empathy when it's actually not the culture of the circle.
When it's not the what? I didn't hear that.
So, like one of the things that I'm aware of being in circles where empathy is not the culture of the circle, and so how to bring empathy in a way like you were talking, like demonstrating with that, just being empathic in the process and saying, yeah, I hear that you want to contribute something, and your turn will be coming up next, or will be coming up in the process.
Tiaho,
closing rooms. Just people are coming back in a minute.
Yeah. We're running short of time. Sorry to cut across you there, Tiaho.
Sure.
There was that point where Edwin was, I know he was acting at the time, but he was pissed off. And that's maybe something as a facilitator you could actually kind of rescue by just empathically acknowledging that he was, that he seemed pissed off, not using those words, but that it would come around to his turn again shortly.
Okay, I've forgotten when that was.
Yeah.
Was he interjecting, or?
I was interjecting. And
I was pissed off that Graham was interjecting. Yeah, those are hard things. Yeah, whether to.
Because I felt like, well, that's okay. He can.
Yeah, that's my approach too. Yeah.
He was speaking, so.
So thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks, Graham, for.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you to your host. Thank you, Joel.
And Joel.
All righty.
Larry,
You're up.
All righty, thank you. So welcome back. I'm just gonna check my microphone is unmuted, yay. And now each of us can take about a minute to each share your experience and your insights. What are your learnings and insights from the experience? And I'll call on people that that way we can move along and use the time. And I'm just going to go across my screen. And if I miss anyone, please, get my attention, raise your hand or speak up. So on my screen, Tiago, would you share for about a minute?
Yeah, handy, I'm not on mute. Yeah, okay, cool. It's like, it's not possible to take the facilitation for granted at all. Practice is really juicy. I don't feel like I've got a minute's worth to say though. Yeah, what it would be like to kind of, with permission, record another live empathic circle and then do reflections on that. So not with people who are like us, we're all kind of like in our learned roles and stuff. It's like, ha, this is the real deal, and have some reflection and sharing around that. And so I'll close there. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Tiago. Joelle?
Yeah, just the practice is so useful. And I also got a sense of my reluctance to offer an empathy circle with my work was based out of feeling like I won't do it right, but you just learn as you're doing it. And then the subject of tension in the group that always is kind of alive in any empathy circle was helpful for me in just accepting a certain level of tension. That was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Joelle. Renata?
I have two screens, so sometimes my cursor is in a different place. I have found quite interesting how each one of the facilitators I've worked so far have a very different style. Yeah, I wonder what will be mine. One of the nice things I like about the circle that always seems to happen is that it gets better as we sort of warm up and the conversation starts going. So something that can be really a bit awkward to start with gets warmer and less superficial and more interesting, and I really love that. And yeah, facilitation is really important, but each one of you guys does it do differently. I'm sure you know that anyway. Thanks.
Thank you, Renata. Michelle XR Eugene.
Yeah, Dean was really tough, and it was really great because I feel like I learned a lot. Yes, I think for me, the big takeaway is how it is so beneficial and I'm not sure what the word is, but just a recognition of being supported when the facilitator comes up when there's an issue going on and addresses it. And the more promptly they address it, the more it holds the circle together. Like letting it go is actually not conducive to which we were trying to do with feeling fully heard. So I think that's my takeaway is be kind, but be assertive and be quick about the correction. Check.
Thank you, Michelle. Freddie?
Hi. I had a really good time, and I was able to figure out some things that I've been struggling with in the last couple of days, and I think that's just like credit to the practice, and so it's really good. What are we doing? Yeah, this time facilitating, I was much better, having done it once before. More relaxed, confident, and yeah, I felt comfortable and confident with dealing with interruptions and in the right way. So yeah, so I feel really good. I'm making progress, and that's really good. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Freddie. Aaron?
Thank you. Really insightful week in our group this week. One of the piece of positive feedback I received, which I didn't do on purpose, but it's a lesson that I'm going to take away, was like gradiented intervention, like starting off with pretty relaxed, and then sort of eventually, if someone's just being really mischievous, building all the way up to sort of giving an ultimatum as to whether they want to be present or as to whether they want to leave, and sort of being intuitive in the way in which that builds depending on the group. Also, another thing that was really interesting was the fact that when there was a lot of distraction within a short time period, it can completely send the energy and harmony of the room off. And I even found my own mind being affected by something that wasn't going. I was a passive listener at this point, and I even found my mind being scattered by what was going on between the active listener and the speaker. And what we proposed in our group was actually, if that happens, to just gather everyone's attention on the facilitator and maybe perhaps like lead 3 coherent breaths to bring everyone like together into the same action, and then go again. That is an interesting concept, sort of marrying what I do in my work here with this process. And yeah, Dean is very good at Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, Dean's a pretty shy guy, you know. Mark?
Yeah, it's great. We've had I had a number of challenges to me that I asked for. I mean, I actually had challenges I didn't specifically ask for, but they were great. So it was really good to get challenged, because then I got some insight into like, well, how am I responding? What's going on inside? Because there's part of me that just wants to control and dominate and put somebody in a box. And the other part is actually, we want this process to work out, and you still have to be kind of complying, but it comes from 2 different spaces. So it was great to see that in action, and also to see some other challenges, how other people responded. And so that there's a lot of insights from working through this. So really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Ron?
Thanks, Larry. Overall, my experience of the last of being in our breakout room was one of fun, one of learning, one of feeling supported and nurtured by the other people in our breakout room. I learned a lot of things. I'd really enjoy working at higher levels of challenge with Dean. I think it could be worth filming and selling, really. Yeah, so I learned, as Aaron said, I think the value of stopping, taking a breath or two, and almost like rebooting the group is, in a way, almost like the ultimate tool for bringing the process back on track. So that was a very valuable learning. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ron. Shay?
Yes, it was very interesting. Many interesting things happen. I learn a lot each time with each meeting, especially today. And also the experience again and again, this process, not as me against the other person, but each person in its place. I'm not sure if I'm understood, but like we are not, even if we speak sometimes on the same subject, everyone can be in his own unique place, not, against each other. It's not something of a war. In a basic, it's a peace process, if you understand.
Thank you, Shay. Tina?
Yeah, so I heard Michelle saying how it's important to address disruptions immediately, and I agree with that. And my inner facilitator, when I'm the facilitator, wants to do that, but I'm like, I don't know what to do. So yeah, and I've asked for the worst possible challenges, and they weren't quite that bad, but so the way it just worked out was that I was just sitting there going like, oh shit, I don't really know what to do, and just sort of rolling with it, and it turned out to be okay. So yeah, I'm just wondering how that's going to translate into the real world when we're not, just doing pretend with each other when we all know it's not for real that somebody's doing what they're doing. So yeah, that was really interesting, and I very much loved other people's requests for challenges, because they asked for things that I was like, oh yeah, I need to learn how to deal with this too. So yeah, I had a very fruitful time with my room. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Marta?
Yeah, I just echo what someone was saying about the importance of each person finding their own way. Like there's things you can learn and share about how each of us deals with something, but ultimately we all have to find our own way. And the more, it's like a practice, the more we do it, the more comfortable we get with it, not just because we learn something over time, but also because we believe we can do it. And that's a big part of it, is the skill, but then the confidence. That's like, everything can go wrong way up, but I trust the method. And that's something that comes with time. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Cecilia, sorry.
Thank you. Don't know what to say. It was really good to practice, and I got some really good. I wrote down a lot of good things to remember, and it's so good to get feedback and to be able to adjust this week for the practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. And Deborah?
Yeah, I had a lot of insights and learnings from other members as well, and it was good to experience the humour and what's just the energy that people bring, you know, which is just as valuable as the how to. It's as the what, it's how it's done. And in my challenge, it was really interesting because I asked for someone to speak on a topic that I knew I'd be triggered by. And I was able to reflectively listen, but I was also aware that I was focusing on the skill. I didn't really have that heart empathy connection with them. So yeah, that's interesting. Just sort of dissonance between the process of what I'm doing, but the attitude I feel inside, there was a bit of a disconnect. So that was interesting. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. And Mr. Shy Guy Dean, would you?
I have some backstreet mechanics at the moment, so occasionally if you hear a bit of machine noise, I do apologise. I have to admit that, yes, during my circle, it was a wonderful circle, and that the level of challenges did get more intense as the circle went on for each one of the trainees. But then again, it's sometimes hard to find a way to be challenging without actually repeating yourself. So in the end, poor Ron, as the last person, thought he'd got the best task because he'd seen it done so many times, actually got the raw deal because he then experienced all the worst aspects of me. And he did say that I was being a bit impish, which was spot on. I was being a bit impish. But then again, it allowed the circle to experience all these different levels and sit in that uncomfortable zone. And sitting in that uncomfortable zone is where we grow. And it's the most important zone for us all to sit in. But it's the hardest zone to find comfort sitting in. But I'd like to thank them all for being up for the challenges, and they did remarkably well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Michelle?
Thanks, Harry. Yeah, I had the privilege again of being on a circle with Celine's really senior NVC trainer. So I find I always grow from being on circle with her, and I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, just with two really great facilitators with Cecilia and Freddie, and yeah, it was we had a really cool conversation about cooking. It was it was great. And at the end we had this really good reflection, around deepening the circles by approaching them as the relational meditation, and just the feel that emerges from that. And so just it was at the end of the circle, was one of them circles where you're like, can we not make this a half an hour longer? There's just so much alive that wanted to be expressed. So it was one of them. Yeah, thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Michelle. Celine?
Well, I, of course, enjoyed being with Michelle in a circle, as well as Freddie and Cecilia. And one of the things that I'm thinking about is the importance of remembering that the different individuals in the circle, we're doing the same thing and we're talking about the same topic, but each person has their own challenges that they're dealing with, and we don't know what they are. So that's what I'm pondering right now. And that's it. I'm complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Celine. Bill?
Yeah, well, I'm always so appreciative of people who putting themselves out, you all putting yourselves out to really learn this. It helps me. It was great to see Martha again, who I hope I can be as skilled as she is when I grow up. And also, I have to say also, for people for whom English is a second language, I really appreciate your effort and courage to do that. It helps me, it broadens my perspective, and it also helps me to face my own limitations. So thank you all.
Thank you, Bill. Graham?
Thank you, Larry. Well, I was in a circle with Edwin and with Joelle and with Tiaho, and I thoroughly enjoyed the whole time. And for me, one of the things that I kind of conclude, or a general conclusion, is that the challenges just reinforced certain very basic values. And one that is that this is a very tender process, and that these disruptions don't belong. And I'm almost quoting Noel here, but Noel talks about coming to terms with the value of limits. So in other words, all the limits and the process that's been defined here, the value of that was brought out in the challenges. And another little one, which was really quite interesting, we one way or another talked about tensions, and that was, I think, one of the topics. Yes, it was Tiaho's topic, and we talked about tension in the circle, and really how this was quite a natural process, and that we just need to be able to sit with that tension and work with it. And so that's those three basic processes or values are my takeaways from this session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Edwin?
Yeah, I'm sitting with the feedback portion, like after someone has facilitated and we give feedback, like just curious, like what's really effective feedback. Would love to hear somehow have maybe a circle or something around that to hear, like, where have you really gotten good feedback? What does really good feedback look like? I kind of tried, woo, right in the ears. Full blast of a sneeze. Yeah, so what does the feedback look like? I can kind of give sort of didactic, educational feedback. I feel a little awkward about that. It's like, I try to express, like, what is it that I felt in the experience, as a participant, like, when someone did something, this was my experience, and trying to share that. So I feel there's a lot more sort of growth around, how to give good feedback. Yeah, thanks, Larry.
All right, I think Celine will take it now. Thank you all.
Okay, so here are a few things for the closing. Are there any final trainer comments? Edwin? Anything more you want to add? No. Or Bill? No? Okay.
I'd like to say one quick thing.
Yes.
I've really actually experienced like this playfulness in our circle today that just was like being in childhood, enjoying childhood while I'm obviously an adult. It was just a beautiful experience. So, hats off to Empathy Circle. Let's keep going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I want to review what we did in this session. And one of the things we did is we had fun. We practiced facilitating an empathy circle and with challenges. Maybe some of you had pretty strong challenges and others medium ones, but that's what we did today. And next week in session 5 is about integrating our learnings and hearing your feedback about the training and a discussion about your next steps. So the process will be the same. We'll be breaking up into groups and facilitating circles with this focus. As far as assignments go, this says we, but it's Edwin who does this. We'll send out an email with a reminder to fill out the session feedback survey. The link will be in the chat as well. Hold an empathy buddy call. Try to facilitate an empathy circle with friends, family, folks you work with. And then think about how you see the empathy circle practice building a culture of empathy in your world. And next, if you would post a feeling in the chat that you have now as a result of being here today. Let's see what we get. I'm going to put so we have joy and curiosity, fulfilled, loved, confidence, lots of joy, joyfulness, excitement, trust, hope. And fun. This is really nice. Anybody else? And then we look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. And if we could close now with jazz hands. Thank you. Have a good week,
See you
everyone.
next week. Have fun with hosting your empathy circles and buddy calls. We'll be sending that out soon.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Till next time.
Bye.